Hello, and welcome to your first video installment of how to successfully write a literary criticism. Students often get tripped up in a class when they have a major writing assignment like this. They typically think of a research paper as something that's daunting and a mountain that's very difficult to climb. And because of that, they procrastinate and often get so far behind that they ultimately throw their hands up and are unsuccessful in the class. This series of videos is intended to help you understand the process, give you hints and strategies as you go through the process to make sure that you are successful students in constructing this literary criticism. So let's start with this first video installment in the content, which is framing and effective research techniques. Now, when we refer to framing, basically it's giving you, the student, an opportunity to kind of ideologically get your brain around what exactly you're going to be covering content-wise in this paper. Most students often think of a research paper as a biography of the author. And while there might be some biographical elements of it, that really isn't the intent of what this specific assignment, and often many college-level assignments in literature and the humanities, are all about. Think of this again more as a literary criticism. You are going to conduct research to analyze the literature created by an individual author and then advance an argument about why that author was important, revolutionary, and noteworthy in their particular genre of literature. So, debunk again the idea that you're doing a biography. That means as you begin researching, avoid areas that simply highlight the awards, the works, or the life of an author. The life often isn't central to the type of literature that these individuals often wrote. However, there is a caveat. If you do find Tennessee Williams, for example, who had strong influences of his family that allowed him to write or had him write his literature about some of the members of his family, then feel free to include that as part of your research. However, if the story of their life doesn't impact the literature that they wrote or the theories that they helped evolve and create, you really want to leave that out of this particular assignment. As far as the plays, typically avoid giving me a laundry list of the plays that an author wrote. That's simply a vehicle by which they became noteworthy on a global level. Also, avoid giving me a list of the awards that individual received. That's basically validation for what they did. So, what you're trying to find then are things like themes, theories, strategies, things that they did that was unique to theater that made them noteworthy in their field. So at the very beginning of this process, it's important that you vet your authors very carefully. Vet, or to research them, to know what you're getting into and who you're going to be spending a substantial amount of time on. The worst mistake a student can make is to not carefully pick an individual. I'll go back to Tennessee Williams. A lot of students in theater pick Tennessee Williams over other authors because they've heard the name before. Yet his work is very subtle, and students often run into a buzzsaw of difficulty because they picked it without carefully vetting really what that author was all about. Now, a website like Wikipedia is not a good scholarly source, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But it is a good jumping off point where you can go and you can get some very simple basics and an overview about that individual author to see if that's someone that you would like to spend a significant amount of time researching and writing about. So make sure you vet your plays early, or your playwrights early. Now, once you've decided who you're going to do, you need to begin your research. So part 2 of this video is effective research techniques, things that you should do and traps that you should avoid. First and foremost, any author that you're doing in literature, start with the DLB. The DLB is an acronym for the Dictionary of Literary Biography. What you want to do is go to the DLB, and it's literally 100+ volume sets of experts who have researched an individual author. Now, the people who are asked to do these articles on an author like Bertolt Brecht or August Wilson literally are the national experts in their field. And what they do is create a 5, 10, 20-page detailed analysis of their theories, their themes, also the life and the plays and the awards that they receive. But again, as I said earlier, you want to avoid that type of content as you're trying to construct your paper for this class and typically other college classes. But the Dictionary of Literary Biography is a terrific way to start. And as a note, it will be a required source for this particular paper in my class. And I would suggest to anyone who's watching this, even if you're not taking a class with me, it is a very highly respected scholarly source to include in any high-level paper that you're writing. So after you've read the entry in the Dictionary of Literary Biography, the next step is to look at the bibliography that is that's at the end of it. Now, these authors that created their entry, their article for the DLB, typically do not use parenthetical documentation or footnotes. It's a long narrative essay that they have created. But at the end of the essay are literally dozens of sources that these experts used to help them come up with all the content that they needed to construct the article that you've just read. So that bibliography at the end of that article is literally gold for you as you're beginning your research process. Photocopy the pages at the end, that bibliography. Try to track down some of those sources. They will be literally a gold mine. Now, other areas that you can utilize as you're beginning your research are of course, is the library. Now, there are two major areas that you can use, or two major ways to research the library. First, you can go actually to the physical building, and you can actually pull texts. Texts that you will be able to use for class include reference books that are specialized to the author or theater. Now notice I just didn't say reference books in general. You can't use a World Book Encyclopedia or Encarta Cyclopedia. It's got to be a specialized book. For example, the Cambridge Encyclopedia of World Drama, which is a terrific source for virtually any of the authors that you're going to get. You obviously can pick a book that was actually written about an author. And one thing that students sometimes fall into a trap is that they will, as they pick an author, they'll go and pick an anthology of plays by Caryl Churchill. Well, unless you want to get bogged down in reading multiple plays by the author, that's typically not a good strategy to use. So you want to use a keyword or subject search for the author and not actually get books that are anthologies of the author's work. Now, the other thing that you can use also are periodicals. There are tons of good theater magazines that are out there that provide very current scholarly analysis of what these individuals are doing. Now, if you are not on site, or if you prefer the electronic method of researching, electronic databases are an excellent way for you to get good quality scholarly articles to assist you with your research. Now, you typically have to have a password and be affiliated with an institution to get into these electronic databases, but databases like JSTOR and Wilson Select are terrific resources for you to get good scholarly high-level articles that are appropriate for your analysis for a paper like this. Now, one thing that I'm not allowing for this class, and I would strongly discourage for any college-level research that you're doing, is to use any type of a website. Websites are fleeting, they're difficult for anyone to ever track down after the paper has been written, and frankly, even if it's published by an institution, an education institution or a university, you never really know who penned the article. And frankly, it's just not accepted as a serious scholarly source at the college, undergraduate, or the graduate level. So for this particular paper, you may not use any websites whatsoever. So let's go back and summarize. This first video is covering the framing of this paper. Remember, you're not writing a biography, you're constructing a literary criticism, where you're going to analyze the themes, the theories, the evolutionary steps that each of these authors took in helping theater and literature. And you can go beyond the realm of theater if it's appropriate for your author. Remember to avoid things like their life, their awards, their work, and focus on the things they wrote about and the theories that they helped evolve. As you begin your research, make sure that you start with a dictionary of literary biography. Make sure that you go to the library and pick reference books that are specific to the author, specific to the theater discipline, and not general reference books. You can find periodicals and other books that use the author as a source, not an anthology that the author has written that's been compiled by someone else later. If you want to use electronic databases, feel free to use databases like JSTOR and Wilson Select. Libraries have very detailed websites that highlight all of the databases that they use. And remember, for this particular paper, websites are absolutely off limits. You might decide to use something like Wikipedia as a jumping off point to help you understand the basics about your author, but that's really where it should end, a jumping off point to allow you to find sources which will bring you a deeper collegiate level understanding of the material. Now, as we end this, I'm going to give you an opportunity for extra credit. I'm a big fan of encouraging students to take research strategies and techniques to take them to the next level above their peer students and above the competition. So in doing this, if you choose in your research to use an explicator, which is a reference book to help you find a reference book, or microfiche or microfilm to use as one of your 6 sources for this paper, I will award you extra credit or bonus points for doing so. Typically, students avoid using explicators, microfiche and microfilm, 1, because it's foreign and alien to them, and 2, because they think it's so outdated and outmoded it doesn't really work. And that's quite the opposite. All of those older sources have not necessarily been encoded into electronic databases, which means if you're finding sources out there through those means, your competition probably is not. And that is what's going to get you noticed by a professor or a supervisor in the workforce at a later time down the road. So that's installment 1. The next installment that you will get is actually writing the annotated bibliography and what you should include, what you should avoid, and how to make a successful choice at what those top 6 sources will actually be for your paper. Good luck.